Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Welcome to bringing another segment of Bringing the World Together with Andrea Mason. We have some people from afar. We shall see what happens if they arrive. So I am honored and grateful to have this guest right beside me on camera live. His name is Warren Marlowe, and today we are going to talk about the effects of mental health and how we can contribute, how it's affecting the world today and in our areas and society. So first and foremost, I'm going to hand the mic over to Warren to introduce yourself, and I will be back soon. Okay. All right. Let's figure out how to.
Hey, how's it going, guys? As y'all know, I'm Warren Marlowe, the host of the Buzzing with Marlowe podcast, the guy with many hats. You know him from the guy who wears the mask on Saturdays, rocking red, white, and blue from head to toe as American Prodigy. Also, a lot of people know me as from the host of Buzzing with Marlowe podcast. I think the one thing that everybody thought I was real popular with everything is, I speak on stuff that events that I've went through. So it's based off, I'm speaking off of how it affected me and stuff like that. And plus I don't have that judgment with anybody. But yeah, man, I'm the host of Buzzing with Marlowe podcast. I'm a pro wrestler. I'm a dad, a husband. I've had some times, as you can tell from the grays in the face, it's been some wild rides, and something that I can always say, even though the tough times, it makes you a better person. It makes me who I am today. But yeah, definitely, I'm glad to be on here. Always good to hang out with Andrea. I was on her show, her podcast recently. She's been on my show at least 3 times now. So it's always good to have, good collab and stuff like this. So I'm excited. It's going to be fun. See what happens.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, Buzzing with Marlowe. Check it out. He's got all walks of life, talks about all topics. And what I love best as when we connected, there's no filter, no excuses, just results, facts, and stats, really helping and empowering the community. So let's jump into it while we are tentatively waiting for some of our other guests. As I said, internet connections, time zones, you know how it is doing things live. So we are talking today about what have you learned upon your journey, and what impact do you bring to the world in regards to competence, courage, mental health, familial, wearing all of your hats. So I'll bring it to you.
Oh man. I just say, man, just go for the chances. And that's something like everybody likes to joke about the many hats I do. One thing I would never be able to say is what if? What if I want to be a wrestler? What if I want to be a dad? What if I want to be a husband? Like, I have kind of tested all these things out in a way. So it's like, when it comes to the mental health thing, I didn't really understand what really mental health was until, when I got to being 23 years old and, dealing with stuff regarding with my son being autistic, and just going through the things that we had to go with and stuff like that. I've really understood what mental health really could do, because I've always been that guy that's been tough. I really cry on. I remember in high school I was voted the most likely to be the shoulder to cry on. So it was like not really normal for me to vent and cry about anything going on too. But when I turned 23, I literally went through so many changes of life. Very young, having to grow up so quick, having a son, it was just a lot of different things that I had to go through, my son, being autistic and stuff like that. I'm not asking for a pity card, but, it does take a lot out of you. Kids that get to walk and stuff at 1 and stuff, you're not getting that pleasure with your son because, it just takes a little bit longer. One thing I just say is patience, and okay too. Then it's okay to let things out, because it's better to let it out and then keep it all in. And that's something I've witnessed 3 or 4 times in my life. So definitely I'm big on mental health. I'm big on, not just trying to toughen it out as much as you can. One thing I always say is every setback makes one heck of a comeback. And that's something I live by every single day. So biggest thing I can tell people is, man, these tough challenges, yeah, it might be tough, it might be hard, but hey man, there might be something in a victory down the road. That's really all I can see it as.
Excellent. So, what would you say was one, when people are going through the way the world is, with mental health, with adversity, with identity, with, stigmatisms and compartmentalizations, what, as first and foremost, as an influencer, what would you say is the biggest challenge that you are experiencing in this arena?
Don't be scared to say something. I think that's the biggest thing I would say. A lot of people, I mean, you look at TV shows, you look at the most typical thing, like when they show a setting where someone is that you're bringing a gun to the school or something, it's because he was scared to say something. A girl scared to say something causes, suicide and stuff like that. Don't be scared to talk. Don't be scared to let your word out. I mean, your word is just as good as anybody on TV. Your word is good as just as anybody on any platform, any Facebook, X, Twitter, whatever we want to call it. Like, your word is just as good as everybody else. It doesn't matter of the worth or whatever. Speak up. That's something like I think, even though it gets a little crazy at times, I think speaking up is the biggest value that you could have into this world when it comes to if you have these issues or if you have something and you want to be afraid, speak up. That's something I would say is the biggest thing, is just literally speaking up on your beliefs, or how you feel, whatever like that. And that's something that I put on my show. Like, if you explain something to me, I want you to talk about it. I want to know why you feel that way. What's the situation that made you feel that way. And I'm not going to judge you, but I'm going to ask you things about it because I want to learn from these things. I want to learn why people feel the way they do. And that's something that I really think is the biggest value you can do, is just speak up.
All right, excellent. Yes, I think that's the biggest hiccup that people have, is the fear to speak up and to express themselves, because they have put them into fear of getting hurt, fear of getting punished. But I know from experience, from being bullied and abused, that if I don't speak up, the matters can only get worse and there can be other individuals experiencing it. So as an influencer, don't let yourself have fear speaking up. Now, as a parent, what would your recommendations to be for those individuals homeschooled, going to school, having a network of your child's support system, and then the other parents not feeling the same? What would be your take on that?
Ooh, that's emotional strings right there. I'm experiencing that now with my daughter, with her being 4 and in school, like in a pre-K school. So I'm not having to really worry about that scenario. Obviously, I'm worrying about her picking up things from kids, like, hey, how to throw stuff and all that. We're taking the backlash at home with that one. But I would say with my 11-year-old, I would say, not be afraid, like we just said. Speaking of, my son has never been scared to say anything. My son greets everyone how they are. I would just say it like how I treat everything else, man. Be nice. You don't know what these people are going through and stuff like that. Some of these kids that are bullying other kids in school, they might not be having the best lifestyle outside of school. This is probably their shelter and their sacred place. Like I would say, for many times when I first started wrestling ring was my clarity. If anybody knows me, my therapy sessions are the gym, and I pick a certain time of the night. It doesn't matter if it's a morning or a day. I'm going for at least an hour to get my mind in the right clarity, and that's the gym. That's something that I feel like is my sacred place and my comfort and stuff like that. And that's something that I would think a lot of these kids, I think most of the kids now these days, I think, got more pressure than anything. But speaking up, just being nice to people, being courteous of people. You never know what these kids are going through and stuff like that. And obviously you're seeing these things on TV and stuff like that. I would definitely say being nice. I mean, that's the only thing you can do. Be nice, respect these others. And respect is a big thing. I mean, I never thought I'd be speaking on anything regarding with kids and stuff, because I'm sure my teacher would be watching this and be like, Warren, you were a class clown and stuff like that. So, I mean, I guess I'm being a hypocrite compared to what it was when I was little. So obviously I have learned a lot compared to when I was in school. So definitely just the speaking up part and just being nice. Definitely just want to be nice.
Thank you. And that's all it takes. It's the simple things when you go back to the basics in life with parents, teachers, educators, societal, and, workers in the authoritative realm is really remember where you came from and having respect, being kind, because it's just that simple. We make everything complex. I think one of the areas that we need to improve upon is, part of the four agreements is not take anything personal. It's not about us. It's not about our thoughts and of others. It's about how we're feeling inside. And if we are able as a human race to say, well, how would you feel upon the receiving end? How would you want your message delivered? Really makes all the difference. Because I remember one of my employers, my bosses at one managers at one of the times said, you could have, the finest cuisine from a 5-star restaurant, but if it's served on a dirty plate, nobody's going to want to eat it. It's about the presentation. So yes, absolutely be kind. And as a parent, dealing with other adults that may be involved, may not be involved, or as you said before, we grew up in a different time, a different era, and that's a cliche in itself because our parents said it to us, and just being mindful of what is going on, having those conversations. We're not saying, and this is one of the things that I've learned in my journey, that how many families sit down to an actual family dinner? Think about it. And how many
Before
foster
COVID.
children,
Yeah. Before
how many
COVID.
foster children and orphans being in the industry and being also in an orphanage that I don't remember, but I was at one point, how dinner can be so either a treasure or a tragedy, a treasure of community of those around you, or if it was difficult and isolated, you didn't know how to act. It was uncomfortable. So let's go into the next tier as we're waiting for some of the others as I'm messaging. Please pardon everyone for everybody's situations. But the next realm is, what would you say as far as our influences? So we spoke about being a parent. We spoke about being an individual in ourselves. So what would you say that you've experienced in the world, whether it's culture based, gender based, region based, however, of the differences? What is the underlying message? What would you see the underlying thread is for those families and individuals out there dealing with mental health?
I mean, whew, yeah, what I've experienced and stuff like that, I didn't really get to experience this stuff until like, I mean, if anybody knows me, my parents were really uptight with us at times. My parents literally, right from right, right from wrong and stuff like that. So it's like we were we were we were on a loose end and stuff like that. I didn't really get to experience a lot of these things until I went to my friends' houses, and getting to see how their lifestyles was so different compared to mine. Now I make it a value to literally appreciate what my parents have, provided me and stuff like this. My dad being in the military, downfall is he was not here most of my life, because he was in the military. Um, as much as I hated him for it, it was because he was making better for me and my sister, man, providing for my mom and my family. So, I'm valuing that more now because I mean, like I said, I only experienced these at my friend's house. So it's just like these little things, like, it was kind of hard to grasp at times. And sometimes I really liked it at the times too, because, like I said, my mom was like really tight with me. So it was like kind of nice to, get that loose screens. And, sometimes I was at friends' houses where we literally, if we didn't eat at a certain dinner time, we weren't eating. And I wasn't like that at my house. Like my mom would be like, hey, when you're ready, I'll make something for you. So it was like those little things were so differential things. But when you come to that mental health scenario, like I said, man, when I was turned 23 is when I really discovered what mental health was. Mental health, I would say, if anything, was like these minor ones. Obviously, when I played basketball, especially when I got to college, I was not a good point guard at all. I was not a good dribbler. I wasn't good at anything. I was just known in high school to be a nice little shooter. I was spot on the corner, and I would just make my shots. The points made more than in the regimes than what I used to make. So it was like that was something different for me because I was able to avoid one of my weaknesses. And obviously, it got me progressed through high school. But obviously, when I got to that level that I've been working hard for, I got exposed because I was only working on one thing. I wasn't working on these things. So I mean, it put me in a big depression at that time because I'm like, I mean, I've got it through this long, so why can't I continue this thing? And sometimes at that time I felt like I could just run from it, and but that's one thing I learned from all these other things, being a father and stuff like that. You can't run from these things. And that's something that I think a lot of people need to realize too, man. It's more to deal with it than run with it, than run from it. Because if you run from it, you have nothing to learn from it. You have nothing to literally go back and go, hey, man, what can I do to avoid that next time? What can I do to this? Because all you're gonna have in that mind is, I can just run from it and I can just, deal with that later or whatever. And sometimes it never ends. And if you deal with it, obviously it's gonna suck at the first part of it, excuse my language, but obviously the end game, there is a passage that literally can be positive. And that's something I've learned since I'm still now 32 years old. I've learned to face my difficulties, learn to face my challenges. With my son being a special needs child, I've learned to deal with so many different obstacles with him that only a few people can only imagine at times. But there's something I've always learned, and this is something I always will live by. Every setback makes one heck of a comeback, and that's something I live by repetitively. And that's something I want people to look at it and go, you know what? I can do this. And that's something that people really do need to hear nowadays. I see with sports and everything like that is most of these people are just getting a participation award. And it's just because, I don't like this, I can go to this team, I can do this. Like, man, sometimes that hard work is what really is going to build that person up. And I feel like that will actually help someone's mental health. If you keep getting the passage, here, just keep going, keep going. Everybody's not going to work hard from it because guess what? They're going to know, I'm going to pass at the end. So it's like, I'm just going to breeze through it instead of really discovering what hard work and that big perseverance is to really get you that tested moment to really, when that moment happens, it really is a feeling like no other. And that's something I wish so many people would just take an acknowledgement and look at me like, hey, I can do this. I can do this. It might be tough now, but we'll see in a month. We'll see in three days. We'll see in 30 weeks. We'll see in whatever time we can do. Like, I want to succeed in this. If I don't succeed, I'm going to give it my all. And that's something I have learned still to this day is if I'm in something, I'm all in. Me being back in the ring, I'm all in back in the ring. Me being on the podcast, I'm all in back on the podcast. Nobody knows. I don't take a break until the end of the summer. And that's just only because I'm spending time with my son at that time. I am literally consecutive. I'm just consistent. That's something that people just got to have is that consistency. And, mental health, I mean, don't keep it in. Go and face it sometimes. And I feel like sometimes facing your fears is what's going to build you up. And that's something I learned at 23 years old. And, if I could go back and tell myself that when I was 23 years old, I would literally say, hey, man, keep going. We got this. Keep going. We got this. Even though my 23-year-old self would look at myself and be like, hey, you're a little gray right now. So obviously it would be a little tough pass, but, like I said, every setback makes one heck of a comeback. And that's something I wish so many people would look at. It's like, it's okay to face it. Don't just run from it. Try to face it sometimes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you remind me, actually, Warren, of the weight trainer, the athletic trainer, Greg Plitt, because that's what he talks about. And do your hardest because your name's attached to it. My parents were that of the elite status of Wall Street. So when I only saw them with my eyes closed, my father especially, and so I had my grandparents to empower me. But a lot of the individuals today, it's about work ethic. And I totally agree with you. We don't push ourselves, and I'm going to make a little waves here, and I would love to see how this flies. But I've seen, and you too, we have spoken across the world on different platforms virtually, or had guests of our own from different walks of life. I believe that, when we talk about America, it's the land of the free and the brave and the courageous. And I just feel that although we have the support available more than other countries in regards to mental health, based on my connections and experiences, I feel that participation, as you mentioned, is one thing, but taking constant steps of action towards progress propels progression. And I think we have this false limited belief that there is perfection when really there isn't. It's just taking constant action steps. And another thing that what I loved about the connection we had is we're driven, we're passion driven. You know what I mean? Like you're on all the time, as well as me. And it's just, we don't stop until we make sure our mission is complete 100%. I love what you said, because I do say that all the time. If I'm giving you 99%, I'm going to have to pass it, because I'm not giving you 100%, because that's just not the way that we are built or wired. And that dedication and drive, that we have. Everybody's like, well, Warren, you're so driven. You do podcasts and you have 3 different episodes, 3 different categories, and you have this going and that going. Same thing with me. You have over 1,000, videos on YouTube. You're doing lives, you're doing this. And then, so for those individuals who, and I always mention this about in the mental health arena, based on our journey, we did have support beams in our lives, whether they be the father, the mother, the coaches, and then stuff like that. But let's be honest, in today's world, kids are raising kids, or let's be really blunt, screens are raising kids. If you think about it, in the grocery store, in the mall, in a waiting, in the car, somewhere, somehow, even the parents, even at dinner, when I do go out far and few between, everybody's on their electronic device, or they're tending to a business call. So I'm all about, and we've mentioned this on this show, being on each other's shows, about being in the present. That's the best thing you could give someone. And I always say time is a gift. It should not be taken for granted, nor could it ever be given back. So in the mindful of our time here, as we're coming to the close, what would be your thoughts on the up and coming youth that are raised by screens, the up and coming parents that are juggling 3 different avenues? What would be your, idea for that? And of course, we have a guest that's just arriving now, so I'm going to tend to them. You answer that question.
I would just simply say, going from me being a father, my kids don't watch cable. I feel like my biggest thing is, and this is something that I'm pretty sure a lot of parents would definitely agree on this, is, I would like to teach them the stuff before a screen teaches them. Be more talkative with your kids. Be more hands-on with the kids, man. That's something like I really take a value of, me going to the gym and stuff. It's not just for me to get really built up and strength and stuff like that. I mean, with me wrestling and stuff like that, honestly, man, I don't make this joke really, really much. I literally am in the gym because of my 4-year-old daughter. I want to keep up with her. I literally, and one thing I try to stay active with my kids. I try to, have conversations. My son, he doesn't live with me. I talk to him on FaceTime at least once or twice a day. There's so many things, like I literally would tell people, and this is something I go through personally. Like I said, my son don't live with me, so I live from what my daughter, that's how I'm learning how to be a father. I have 2 kids, but I'm learning to be a dad with my 4-year-old more, because my son was not with me from, after he was 2. My son was, with his mom, 8 months old, 8 months and stuff. If you want to check that out, go on my show. You can hear all that. But, something I've learned is, embrace and take value of everything that you have gotten. One thing I've learned so many different things is embrace and celebrate the small moments of everything that I have. I mean, it's super a blessing, and that's something I tell people is get to learn your kids, and that's something like I I've been one of those ones that look at it too. But with me having my 4-year-old now, I'm very hands on with her. I want to be around her. Seeing her grow up now, and she's about to turn 5. It's just still crazy to me because I'm still seeing that little angel, even though she's growing up to be a good big girl and stuff like that. She's learning these things on TV, and how much of a sponge kids are is learning more stuff from TV screens than what they are with the parents and teachers and stuff like that. That's something I would really preach for a lot of families to look at, is be the ones to teach your kids first before the screen teaches them. I'd rather my daughter and them learn something from me before TikTok. I'd rather my son and stuff learn stuff from me before they go on Twitch and see crazy stuff, absurd scenes and stuff on TV and stuff like that. That's something I literally take very big value, is I want to be hands open with my kids. I want to talk to them. I want to have conversations with them. And that's something like you also need to do with your significant other too, is have the conversations, because these things really do in the long run help not only the kids but the growing generations before them, after them, and even further on. That's something I would teach so many people is, learn from your family. Learn how to be more embracive, more chatty, learn stuff from them, because man, if you ain't teaching them, they're going to learn something, and it might not be what you want to hear. So, I mean, it's up to you. You have that time. Like I tell people all the time, kids look at us like a Google. We are their Google. So they're going to learn everything from us. I'd rather my kids learn stuff from me before they learn from Johnny or Patrick or Jamie or whatever kid that they've been around. Lord only knows what their background is. Lord only knows what the backstory is with school. They might not be the most nicest people in class. You don't want your kids learning how to bully and stuff like that. So you want to be more hands-on with your kids. That's something I really preach on very much, is learn your kids before someone teaches them. And then it's too late. That's something I would teach someone right off the rip.
Absolutely. I love that. Yes. And I've always said it starts within the four walls of your home. That's where everything begins. That's the area, the arena that you must, take into great pride, as well as learn communication, listen, and, coach. We are their first coach. We're the first eyes that they set on and learn from. And we have to lead by example. You don't know, I know it's difficult for some parents, but they say one thing and do another. And I remember growing up, in my household with the elder generation, the grandparents, great grandparents, and so forth, aunts and uncles, kids were seen and not heard. Well,
Yep.
now it is that way, but in a negative way, because it is just, I can't tell you how many times in the educational system, the community
I couldn't be a
systems,
teacher.
it
I
was,
could
yeah,
not be a teacher.
that their hands are literally tied. And when I'm very proactive when I coach families and parents and teachers. Like, you all need to be on the same page regardless, because you're molding a younger person's mind. And then well, I don't want Johnny or Julie to do this, and I can't say this or whatever. And it's, as opposed to the adults uniting to mold and enhance the quality of life of the child, it's kind of like parents against everyone else, because the
Mm-hmm.
parents aren't available, whether they're working or, like you said, you have to you have to schedule, just as important as your business or your career or what have you. You have to schedule and make time for your family to
Right.
educate one another, to be in communication. Because I can't tell you how many times there are so many children out there that don't talk to their parents, fearful talking to the parents, and then it's too late for whatever the
Mm-hmm.
situation is. Whether it be an academic level, whether it be an athletic level, whether it be an emotional level. The times are fast. Kids are growing up, and we sound like our parents, but it's really true. And in today's day and age, there
Never
is
thought of that.
limited, right? We do. If how many times have you spoken to your children? You're like, that's my mom said that. My dad said that. My grandfather, my grandmother said that.
Every time I visit my mom, she looks at me and goes, "How do you think I felt?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh man."
Just say, I'm sorry.
It's like, yeah.
Because it's that old traditional curse. You're gonna have 20 just like you. If you don't have 20, you're gonna have one that's double like you. And you're just like, wow,
So I
wow.
read something just recently, and I think this means a lot.
Hmm.
Obviously, family life is not that easy right now.
Right.
Financials, stuff like that, and
Sure.
I mean, a lot of people can be going through a lot because I mean, money is insane right now. I mean, it's
Hmm.
$6 for a Gatorade and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like it's insane. So one thing I did read, and it was on social media just recently, was your work system. It's a revolving machine. It's going to
Yes.
keep going. You're replaceable. But
Yes.
as a father, as a mother,
No.
that's not. And
Yeah.
that can really affect that kid later down the road. Lord only
Yeah.
know that can burn you out so much to where you don't have a longevity span. And then when it's too late, you're a grandparent, but then you're gonna have to like literally have your kid look at you and like, oh, you weren't a great mom and dad, but you're a decent grandparent. And
Yeah.
that's something like you would have to value in, and you won't get that much time. And Lord only knows what our time is. So that's something I literally tell people is time is valuable.
Yeah.
And that's something I've learned, the stuff that I went through with my son and my daughter and stuff I'm learning now is time is valuable, man.
Yeah.
I'm taking advantage as much as I can, having my child, having those times, the times that my daughter would come in here and just spout out while I'm recording and stuff like that. I
Mhm.
cherish these things, and sometimes
Yeah.
I keep them on the show, which is so weird because people are like, "You're not gonna edit." I'm like, I'm a stay home dad for 4 days,
Yeah.
so it's like,
Yeah.
it's a part of the moniker. I'm a
Yes.
dad first, so it's like
Yes.
those things happen. It's
Right.
better to let these things go around instead of just trying to avoid it. And that's something
Yes.
I learned. Work is a revolving machine. You're
Yeah.
replaceable,
Yeah.
but mom and dad, you're not.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Warren. Yes, family first. And family doesn't have to mean blood related. It could be it could be communal, it could be people that you connect with virtually, in person, even those who have those dogs and cats part of their team. It
Oh boy.
is being family first. That's what the main mission is, because without family, what structure and foundation do you have? So it has been an honor and privilege and pleasure. Once again, Warren, I'm going to have you do some closing notes and then remind everyone where they can find you, how they connect you, and what you got coming down the pipe. The stage is yours.
Hey guys, y'all can follow me on YouTube. Check it out, Buzzing with Mother podcast. We do an episode every Friday. You can catch me if you like pro wrestling. I'm on there with my group, the Commission Talks. We're on every Wednesday. I'm trying to play around with some things. Might do some watch alongs and stuff like that. I've been getting a lot of requests to do these things. Obviously, if you're a fan of pro wrestling, if you're in the Florida area, the Georgia area, and stuff like that, I'm pretty much wrestling every other weekend out there. But you can catch me as American Prodigy. You can catch me all around, man. That's something like I'm very consistent. I'm very on the go. So it's like, these fun things. But you can check my link tree. You can follow us on a Buzzing with Marlowe podcast on all social media handles. I would say Twitter, but it's now the X apparently. So um, you can follow us on there. You can follow us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, all those, man. We're even on Apple and on Pandora now. So you can follow us on that. You can follow the differences. When you get the audio, you just get the interview. And then if you get the video, you're gonna get the whole opening segments and everything through the whole episode. So that's a little bit of the things on that. So guess just check us out on Buzzing with Marlowe. I have a new guest on every single week. We talk about anything and everything. It's not pre-planning questions. It's a good ordinary chat, just talking about what you can learn from and just letting people know, like, this is a simple person can just do exactly the big achievements that my guest is doing or whatever. Just you got to put in the work. You got to put in the time and the effort to do it. So if you want to check those out, check it out on Buzzing with Marlowe. Go on YouTube. Yeah, man. Thank you. Andrea, thank you. This was absolute fun. It's always a pleasure. So thank you.
Yes. Warren, where he says work equals wins. Absolutely. He's a man, living testimony of that. My good friend, nonstop. Check him out. All the information will be in the show notes. This will also be on YouTube. I will stream the link to my page. So follow us. Again, another segment of Bringing the World Together with Andrea Mason. This will happen monthly. We will see what happens going forward. To those guests who couldn't make it, I understand. But the show must go on. Thank you so much, Warren, for being here. I truly appreciate. Check out all his information. And real quick, anything coming new that the audience should be mindful of?
Oh man, I got an episode. We're gonna talk about the biggest achievement. I think a lot of the guys that would talk about it when I first retired from wrestling. Well, when I stopped wrestling for 4 years, I can't say retire anymore because I've already came out. So,
Yes.
there was a sport called flag football, and
Okay.
now
Very
is
familiar
now
with it.
becoming an Olympic game. In
Wow.
2028, in the LA Olympics, they're actually going to be an Olympic sport. So we're going to have a chat talking about, does the NFL players, is it okay for them to replace the original flag players that have been playing these preliminaries for the last 4 years to get this as an Olympic game? So if you're interested in that, definitely come and check us out. We're going to have a live episode Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. You can check us on YouTube. We might even do it on Facebook. It just depends on the volume of the audience that we're going to have on these things. But yeah, definitely that one's going to be a real interesting episode.
All right. Excellent. Again, thank you for your gift of time. Never taken for granted and always appreciated. Thank you so much, Warren.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that closes another segment of Bringing the World Together with Andrea Mason. A few minutes over, but it's always educational, fun, as well as entertaining. So thank you so much. Stay tuned and have a good one. Take care. Be well.